Good afternoon and welcome to the Center for Future Educators College and Career Readiness Week. My name is Dr. Jean Del Coley and I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Future Educators. The CFE's goal for this week is to pull experts from around the state to help us explore the many facets of the education profession. This week, we've heard from teachers, administrators, college and university personnel, education support professionals, as they all discuss what it takes to get a student's college and career ready. We thank them all for their time and their wisdom for this week. Our theme today is building blocks for student success, parents and caregivers, and we have a special treat for you today. Our guest presenter is Katy Smith, a licensed parent educator from Minnesota and the 2011 Minnesota Teacher of the Year. If a parent educator sounds like a strange certification area, it is because we don't have that licensure here in New Jersey. But hopefully after today's session, you'll understand the importance of working with parents, especially in early childhood education. You're in for quite a treat, and we will have an opportunity for Q&A from the audience later in the show. The CFE only exists because of a unique partnership between the College of New Jersey and NJEA. Before we get started today, we have a special guest with us, the Dean of Education, Dr. Suzanne McCotter, and at this time, I'd like to invite her to say a few words.
Thank you so much, Dr. Del Coley. I don't want to take too much of your time because I, like you, are eager to hear about the topic for today, but I just want to compliment the Center for Future Educators, both Dr. Del Coley and also Ms. Gilbert, who is hiding behind the logo, TCNJ Center for Future Educators, for the innovation in presenting this series this week that really gives you a broad perspective on what it means to be an educator. So I am so eager to hear this discussion, and I will turn it back over. Thank you so much and welcome to our audience.
Thank you, Dean McCotter. And without further ado, I'd like to bring you the marvelous Katy Smith.
Thank you very much, doctors. So excited to be here today. And I have to tell you, I'm sharing my screen and coming up. There we go. So it looks seamless, doesn't it? When people introduce themselves with such confidence and with their titles. And I have to tell you this, every single one of us is nervous. I've been doing this for like nearly a century, it feels like to me. And one of the things I just want to offer to every single one of you is our hearts are racing, our heart rate is up, and we're a little sweaty or a little freezing, and that sometimes never goes away. I'll tell you, I've kind of dug deep into that a little bit for myself, and I have figured out that it always comes back to just being so honored to have been invited to speak in front of anyone. And so although I can't see you, I imagine you in classrooms, in your homes, on the other side of this computer screen, and I'm delighted, just absolutely delighted to be here. I'm sure Dr. Del Coley will give you all the contact information you need, but I just wanted to give you a special invite. If like after this hour, you think, oh my goodness, that gal, she was speaking my language and I want to find out more about her, there are several ways to connect with me, and I've put those on the screen now. And so go ahead and snap that if you'd like and connect with me. I love to talk to aspiring educators about early childhood and parent education. And so give me an hour. I think I will sell you on the importance of this. And so my teaching path begins with a story. Most teaching careers or education careers begin with the story as well. A teacher that inspired you, a moment in a classroom that changed your life. Sometimes the stories are beautiful and sometimes the stories are heartbreaking. But my friend Josh Parker told me years ago to always follow your heartbreak. And so I will tell you this. This is just one picture that I have, the only picture I have of me and my mother. She is the person that has inspired my career path and actually started to inspire my career path when I was a very little girl. I knew that something was wrong with my mom from almost the very beginning that I have any memories about her. She had highs, but she had real lows that were concerning to me even as a small child. What I understand now is that she suffered from postpartum depression and then depression in general. And I often wondered all the way through my life, my early elementary years, high school and middle school, if there could have been some more supports for her. In fact, depression was one of the reasons that she died at the young age of 37, and me, I was just 7 years old. And so I have always wondered, one of my lifelong questions is, how do we support young parents so that they feel more comfortable talking about the struggles of being a young parent, the struggles of postpartum depression, and the struggles with depression? And so that's kind of the drumbeat that I've always had behind the work and the decisions that I make about work. That have gotten me to being sitting right here in front of you today. I work in a program called Early Childhood Family Education. It saved me. And it helped me do a pivot in my career. Up until my early 20s, I had finished a BSW in social work, and then landed in a program that was transformative for me. In fact, I joined Early Childhood Family Education as a young mother, again, trying to figure out how to get more supports for myself, wondering if I too would have postpartum depression, or if depression was going to be part of my life story. It has not been, but that very first class, a baby and me class that I took, made me understand that I needed to get another degree. And so I have a parent education license as well. And so it is Early Childhood Family Education, nearly a 50-year-old gem right here in Minnesota, with kind of, I see some of the same roots of programs all across the nation, but nothing as unique as this. Part of the reason I said yes to visiting with you today is one of my lifelong dreams is to have more programs in early childhood that support parent education all across the nation. And so again, if I speak your language, you need to find me. Here's what I'll tell you. A typical day at Early Childhood Family Education has parents and kids coming into school together. I often stood at the front door and watched families come in, often moms or dads with a baby on their hip and a toddler in their hand, coming into school. And it never was lost on me how important just that single message is. When parents walk into schools with children, without saying a word, their actions speak volumes, that it's important. School is important, that parents have something to learn, that children have something to learn. And in fact, that learning is a lifelong endeavor. And so that was never lost on me. I was, and you can see, you can maybe find me in a picture there, have been a parent educator my whole career since then. And what a typical day looks like is families come in and there is parent-child activity time, a time for parents to engage with their kids with fantastic play-based learning. We do a circle time, which is super fun. We get all the mess, easels and Play-Doh and glitter. And I will tell you that those tools, easels, Play-Doh, and glitter are exactly the things that you want little children to learn, because they build muscle strength and stamina for the tools that they'll learn in elementary school. And then we ring a bell and we sing and gather up for a circle time. And we practice taking turns and sharing stories and learning songs, things that bind a community together and build a community just by the experience. And then children separate and stay in an early childhood classroom with an early childhood teacher. Their day includes some fantastic centers with play and gross motor and friendship time and snack time. And I hang out with parents for an hour and a half and do all of the things to support parents so that they can feel confident and competent in their work as their child's first teacher. We do a whole lot of growth and development. We do a whole lot of community supports, and we do a whole lot of mental health supports for parents. Again, when you remember that my driving force was how do we support parents so that depression doesn't sink them, and postpartum depression can be as common as 70% of a population for women, and postpartum depression actually occurs in men too, in a different way. And so we gather together and we hang out. And the wonderful thing about being a parent educator is I often had families in my classes for as many as 5 to 7 years because they kept having children. And so it's a unique, long relationship that helps build a foundation for not just school readiness, but for life readiness as well. It's a bold move that Minnesota took almost 50 years ago that was rooted in prevention. What happens instead when we stop spending, not stop, but change our focus in the way we spend money on families rather than trying to repair families when they're hurting? What would happen if we started to invest in families when they're new and give them the tools that they need to be successful in raising kids? We've got some wonderful data that says this was a bold move, but a really good move for health and growth and development for not only children, but for the parents that raise them. And by parents, I could mean childcare providers and nannies and all the folks that love on little kids, all the grownups that love up on little kids. And so it also includes home visiting, where when people have babies, home visiting for if a problem exists outside of a classroom and people are needing some more focused supports. It has hard stories, really heavy stories that you carry, but joyful experiences as well. I have been perfectly suited to this career. I have to tell you this, that when you think about early intervention, not only for children, but for families as well, the earlier, the better. And I don't want you to think of earlier academic focus. This isn't about testing. This isn't about numbers and letters. This is about seeing families earlier, especially for kids who are on a trajectory that looks different than their peers. And so I have seen magic happen in early childhood intervention because we got to a family early. Those are tough conversations, but far better to meet it head on when a baby is 1 or 3 than to wait until maybe 2nd grade before somebody notices that this child is on a different developmental path. And so the same is true for parents. Far better to find parents who are struggling in those early years, right? To feel like they're not connecting with their child or they don't have the skill set that they're needing to feel competent and confident about being a parent. So meeting them earlier, the better. I love to help parents understand that they know their child best and they are suited like no other person to understand and to support this baby and to find the strengths that they have. I definitely teach from a strength-based perspective, and I hope that you will too forever, right? To look and see what is golden about this relationship, about this parent, about this child that we can build on from there. And it's wonderful. Again, when you carry a baby into a school, you start right away by telling that baby school is really important. Let's talk about that first year a little bit because everybody's talking about it right now. By the way, if you're considering a career in early childhood education, oh my stars. When I took a look at and listened to and looked at it again and peeled it apart, everything that this current administration is talking about investing in our youngest learners before they get to kindergarten. And so in a lot of ways, it feels like early childhood folks are doing a happy dance and we have arrived. But I'll tell you why those early years are really, really important. And particularly that first year. I'm wild about babies, like really unusually wild about babies. And so let me tell you a few things that I tell parents in that first year that support them as leaders of this relationship. So babies wire trust in that first 6 months. Isn't that something? Trust. And so the way that babies wire trust is they use their awkward ways, and they're super awkward, don't get me wrong. It's not wired up yet, right? And so they try every way that they can to communicate with their parents when they need something. And when parents respond to babies' needs, that starts to wire a trusting relationship. Babies start to know when I cry, someone comes and gets me. When I'm uncomfortable because it's hot, someone understands me and takes off my sweater. And then I feel heard and understood. That trusting relationship between a parent or a care provider and a baby is the whole foundation for trusting relationships throughout a life. Now, that can feel really daunting to an exhausted parent. And so it doesn't mean that you have to get up and do everything right away when that baby commands it, but even your voice in a room to let babies know that I am here, I am close, we care about you, we hear you, is really important. And wouldn't it be just transformative if every single person on the planet knew that they could trust other human beings? I think it would change everything. And so love and trust is that one of the things that babies help parents learn to wire. They are powerful communicators, right? Even without language. If you take a look at babies, they're pretty smart about letting you know what they need. They can talk, they can with crying, they can talk with their movements, they can talk with their gross motor big muscles, and they can talk with their little muscles as they get. They can squeal, they can let people know how important it is to be heard. And when we hear them and when we make eye contact with them, we wire up an attachment that people call serve and return. So when a baby coos at you, and I hope you haven't gotten too far away from your baby voice, and you coo back that, babies must just feel like they have magical powers because they were able to engage a grown-up and a grown-up spoke in their language, and it helps relax them, it helps regulate them. When we all feel understood, it can change everything. I also have to tell you that babies are global speakers for the first 9 months. And so they will take in all languages in the first 9 months and start to wire them in their brain. Again, long before they actually speak them. After 9 months, they start pruning off sounds that they don't need in their brain. And so having a really rich environment of words and languages and music and tones and tenors all make for this. I don't think you're going to believe it, but it's pretty amazing. The number of words a baby hears in their first year of life is the best predictor of their 3rd grade reading ability. What? Isn't that astounding? When I tell parents that just is a game changer because it really inspires them to fill their house with words. And it doesn't even matter that they're baby words. It's just narrating your day and talking to a baby all day and filling your house with love and language and music and words. And so that also inspires us, right, to take a look at and make sure that the parent who's putting words in the house is doing well. I will tell you that depressed parents speak far fewer words in their home than parents who are feeling on top of their game. I will tell you that couples who are feeling well supported do a lot more talking to each other than couples who do not, right? It's kind of a bonus to have a dog or a cat in your house, especially if you talk to them. It's also a bonus to have siblings in the house too, because that just fills the world with words for a baby. Hey, by the way, sometimes people think, oh, I'll just turn on a radio station and my baby will get words. No. Babies are inherently wired to figure out and be drawn to their parent voices. And so they want to be with you, and your voice, parents' voices, are the most, not that, I mean, some of you might be parents. Sorry, I got off track for a minute, but they are just driven to listen to and are insanely curious about parents might want to say. And so when parents are well, babies do better. When parents feel supported, babies do better. When parents feel confident, babies do better, not just in babyhood, but in childhood and beyond. And so it makes really good sense to talk about earlier the better for babies and for parents, because when babies are fully supported, the whole world is better. I have to also tell you that there's some basic needs that come from just for all of us, right? That just are something that I navigate in my brain when I'm working with families. Everybody needs to feel like they are loved and they belong someplace. Everybody likes to have a little bit of power. Everybody knows that. Adolescents know that very well. 3.5-year-olds know that very well. Everybody still, hi, from From the time that you're born all the way to the time that you aren't all right on the planet anymore, need to have fun. Early childhood is lots and lots of fun. We do lots of laughing. 3.5-year-olds are about the funniest thing I've ever met in my life. I love that demographic. Everybody needs to feel like their survival needs are met, like I'm going to be cared for, I'm going to have all the food and all the shelter and all the love that I can handle. And then everybody likes to have personal freedom. When parents understand basic needs of children and of themselves, it's easier to do some self-care around that and to do some care around that for kids. And if we can help parents understand children through a lens of child development, good child development, it's far easier to take their, be curious about their behavior instead of taking their behavior personally. And so that's just kind of a glimpse into what parent education looks like. I like to think that when parents graduate from my program, and I have had lovely graduation ceremonies for them as well, that they have a really good foundation of early childhood development, almost an associate's degree, depending on how long folks were there. And they feel really confident in a foundation with their kids of knowing who they are, knowing what their relationship about, knowing how their child ticks, which is so important. For those of you who grew up in a home where you felt like I really click with my parents, they know me, they understand me, you've had a dramatically different upbringing than someone who at your age says, I just don't feel like I fit here, or I just feel kind of like somebody who doesn't really belong in my family, or I've really struggled in this relationship. And that has not ever been a problem for you. It's been a parent who maybe hasn't understood who they were given, right? And so when we can help parents understand who they were given and celebrate the child that they have, it turns out to be a win-win for parents and for children. So here are some threats to childhood. And I have to tell you, if you ask me to do this talk again in 2 weeks, I might switch them up. I'm sorry. It just ebbs and flows. And so I will tell you the things that keep me up at night, keep me engaged in advocacy, and keep me really passionate about the work that I do. Because let's remember this. Kids who are 0 to 5 are not very good advocates for themselves. Like, they can't read or write. They can't hire a lobbyist. They don't drive, right? They're terrible organizers. They have no cash for a super fund or anything. And so it's up to the grown-ups who actually are the architectures of childhood to make sure that we're setting kids up for success, but also setting them up for an early childhood that recognizes this as a unique stage in life. One of the threats that just I feel all the time is our rush to have kids grow up. And if you're always thinking about what that child is going to look like as a kindergartner, you forget to enjoy just the beauty of living or hanging out with somebody who's 3.5 years old. There is no benefit after 100 years of all the advances in all the ways we've tried to make kids grow up faster. Like, think about that technology and all the science and the neuroscience we know, all the research in child development that we know. Still, after 100 years of this, no kid is getting to their developmental milestone any faster than they were 100 years ago. And so we have to stop and just recognize that, boom, this is a powerful stage in life and worth investing in. Instead of trying to make it something different, let's just really dive in there and enjoy what it is. And there are lots of people that are so well suited for that. And so here are some threats to childhood that I think are worth visiting about for sure. And again, I will tell you this, I would change my mind next week if you ask me again. But there is right now almost a cultural assault on play, although I'm going to be really curious to see post-COVID how it looks for families. Lots of families who have now spent a lot of time with their 0 to 5-year-olds in their house have really maybe had an opportunity to take a look at play in a whole different way. Play is essential for children's growth and development. It just It's essential. It's not an add-on. It's not a, oh, if we have some extra time, we can. It's not a, oh, there's eight centers in a preschool room and one of them is play. It's essential to their mental health. It's essential to their physical health. It's essential to their social health. And that might be the one that really, I don't know, sneaks up and just gets us. After the pandemic, lots and lots of parents are saying, oh, my kids have really missed the social interactions. Of course they have. It's through play that kids wire their relationships. They test some boundaries. They kind of work out feeling big and in charge and feeling small and unsure. It's a safe zone for them to work out their feelings, intense feelings, and happy feelings. It's a place for them to work out complex issues that they're dealing with in life and in their families. As an aside, I just had a parent who talked to me about the death of a family pet, which reminds me of a story of a child that I knew who had lost a family pet and for weeks then played vet, right? And just had so many of her little plastic animals die again and again and again. And it took, the mom was really concerned at the time, like, how long are we going to lay dead animals? And I said to her, as long as it takes for a child to work out the complexities of that. And the child would come back and ask the parents some questions about it. And they would play vet and back and forth until the child worked it out. Kids work out a lot of their struggles and their interests in play. I always love to see a 3.5-year-old start to play with power, right? So they start to talk big and they run super fast and they wear capes and they say, Miss Katy, I flew today. And you believe them, right? Their imaginations are incredible. And they talk big and they act big because they're moving into a developmental stage that has them do bigger things. All of those things happen only through play. If we were to sit down with worksheets in a preschool room and say, today we're going to talk about power and your developmental stage, and we're going to read a story and do a worksheet, this does not fly. You can't plop a kid in front of a milestone at this age and say, here's what we're going to work on. You have to just develop kind of the garden, kindergarten, it's why we called it the garden, of a place that they can explore all those issues. And by the way, if you've not watched 3-year-olds play for a while, you should watch, because you get a sense now that you're past early childhood of all the complexities of the things that are going on in their head. Most of you, I hope, can remember a time even at your own bus stop. I remember my bus stop. It was one of the places that I felt like I had my earliest roots in community organizing. We would do really all kinds of plans about what we were going to do after school that would require a lot of meetings, a lot of talking about it, and a lot of community building and resource management, because some kids had balls and some kids had bats and some kids had bases. But when you think about what happens during play and how kids organize around it, those are those skills that every grown-up needs. And so we have to give kids the time and the space to play. By the way, kids have lost 8 hours in just this last generation of time to play. And can I tell you that play, when it's free and it's self-chosen, is really different than like roster play, right? So we can all play soccer with a bunch of kids, and it's not the same with 3-year-olds than sitting with plastic animals and a box of raisins and doing your own thing. And so play is under some scrutiny right now, and I'm always recruiting champions for it. In fact, with my email address, I've kept a bibliography, a live bibliography, for about 4 years. If you ever find yourself in an education situation where you need to advocate for play, I can help you with that. I've done a lot of the legwork and would be more than happy to share that with you. This used to make me laugh, right? So here's a preschool teacher, obviously in a classroom, a preschool classroom, and he says, time's up, crayons down. And it used to crack me up, but it doesn't crack me up anymore because it's the truth. Standardized testing has come down to preschool levels, and it just shouldn't be. I think I'm getting to the bottom of it, and I don't think I'm probably yeah, I think I'm going to practice some impulse control and tell you that I think there's lots of forces that have gotten us here. But like I said, in no way has it made kids come to their developmental milestones any earlier. And so letting them play actually builds kids to be mentally healthier, physically healthier, and emotionally healthier. And so it's never going to be because they were standardized in their testing. In fact, I think we should spend a lot of time and energy testing whether they are happy and curious and joyful and creative thinkers before we ever test their number skills or letter skills. Okay, this, I know you're thinking, what is this? What kind of joke is this? And it's not. It's so it's old, right? And like people, this thing, when the bouncy seat came out with an attachment arm for an iPad, most of us in early childhood went, no, you can't do that to babies. And this is such a tough year to talk about screens and little kids. But I would just not even recognize myself if I didn't say we have to have a reckoning after this COVID year about the role of screens in all of our lives. Where would we have been without them? I don't know, right? But we have to dial back and take a look at how do we connect as human beings, one-to-one, not FaceTime, but face-to-face again. Because it's just so important. And so those of us that work in early childhood, did preschool on screens as a way to connect with children, and nobody felt good about it, right? There are so many of your teachers who did what they did to do what they do so that they could get it done. But kids, really little kids, are particularly susceptible to harm from screens. First of all, they're tiny. I'd love to think about a tiny little sprout. So if you were growing tiny little, I don't know, parsley, and you just finally got a little green sprout, super exciting. You would never put it out on your deck in the noonday sun, right? and not, because it would be too much. It would be too much heat, too much light, and it wouldn't do well. And so young brains are particularly susceptible to harm from screens. Young bodies, young speakers, there are so many adverse happenings because of very little kids on screens. I will tell you this, the American Association of Pediatric Doctors have never changed their recommendations for, and this is hard to hear, no screens for kids under 2. And less than 2 hours of screens for kids 3 to 5 or 6. The more screen time that very little kids have, it just has some adverse effects for their learning ability, their relatability, their brain wiring. And so if you're going into early childhood or early elementary, be that teacher that draws a line, right? That just says, well, screens won't be everything. I actually had to sub in a kindergarten classroom once, and the woman, just for a couple hours, and the woman was just shocked. She's like, I am so sorry, but our smart board is down, and we can't do Go Noodle today, and I don't know what you're gonna do. And I said, oh, don't worry about it. I strangely always have finger puppets. And so I asked the kids to circle up, and I got some finger puppets out, and we sang, and I got through the next 25 minutes of circle time the way they would have on Go Noodle. And after I was done subbing, the paraprofessional said to me, I can't believe it. Like they were in a trance, and they all participated. And I will tell you this, little children would much rather engage with a real person than a screen person. And so sharpen your skills. Here's the great thing. I don't even sing well. No, I'm serious. I do not sing well. My husband pays me $5 a trip to not sing in the car because that's how bad I am. But little kids do not know and do not care. What they understand about me is that I'm playful, and I'm happy to be there. And I love early childhood books and songs and stories and finger puppets and big voices and big movements. And so kids know who playful people are. And so that's why that works for me. And so we as grownups have to protect kids and put a pause after this school year. And I hope you take a pause as well. Oh, I hope you get to pause after this year of just screen tsunami, that you're able to separate from it and find your place in the natural world and connect with real friends in a real room again, because there really is no substitute for that. And developmentally, it's really imperative for little kids. I am looking at my clock and I think we're going to be fine. I do. Okay, so here's what I'm going to tell you, that one of the things that I offer as a threat to childhood is children's ability to do some self-regulation. I have to tell you, very little kids need a ton of co-regulation. They don't navigate their feelings very well. I don't know if you've hung out with a 2-year-old, but you don't often find a 2-year-old who's having a meltdown and then saying, oh, I've got to pull myself together. I'm going to take some deep breaths and I'm going to calm down. This is intense. They just don't. They actually need grown-ups to help them, right? To say things like, come here, sit on my lap. We're going to be okay. You're having big, big feelings, right? And to help kind of lower the temperature. By the way, and I will not see your hands, but raise your hands if you feel like still you need some co-regulation from people that love you and care about you. I certainly do. Not all the time, but there are times that I feel like I have to talk it out with a friend. I have to consult with my husband about something. I have to cry in my car. Right? Those kinds of things. And so self-regulation requires a ton of practice. Remember, our last screen was about screens. And so I see it happening very often that instead of helping kids self-regulate or co-regulate with kids so that one day they can self-regulate, we're often asking them to regulate on a screen or handing them something to avoid the whole situation. Kids need a lot of practice being disappointed, not for awaiting their turn, navigating other people's feelings. All that requires tons and tons of practice. And yet we live pre-COVID in a world that almost didn't have time for that. If you've ever seen or not taken a look, if you've ever taken a look at Walter Mischel's work with kids and impulse control and the marshmallow studies, I just highly recommend them for you. Really quickly, Walter Mischel wanted to understand at what age can you expect kids to wait a bit for something great to happen. And so he set up this great experiment. He set it up twice. The time that it worked well, he set it up with 3.5-year-olds who he put in a room with a marshmallow or two and said to them simply this, hey, I got a deal for you. If you can hold on to that marshmallow and not eat it for 15 minutes, I'm going to come back with the second one and you can have 2 marshmallows. Which seems like such a great deal when you're 3, that a third of the kids right away just ate the marshmallow. Like, here's a marshmallow. What is 15 minutes? And what I see a marshmallow, I am going to eat it. And another third of the kids were able to really comfortably sit with a marshmallow, right, for 15 minutes and got a second one. My favorite research happens with those kids that could do it or could almost do it, but struggled with it, right? And so you see these little videos of kids who are just trying so hard to sit with a marshmallow for 15 minutes. And they often would hide their eyes, right? And turn their bodies. They would talk to themselves, which was so charming, like, I will not eat it. I will not eat it. I will not eat it. Some of them at about the 8th minute would start to like lick the marshmallows or put it in their mouth, but take it out, not really chew it. They're charming and adorable. And I direct you to those because this is research that has stood the test of time. Kids who could sit comfortably with those marshmallows turned out to be kids that did not struggle with impulse control, right? Who kind of knew, yeah, I can't do that with you guys tonight because I got this test tomorrow, so go ahead and have some fun. The kids who could not even sit with the marshmallow for 1 minute, not even when the researcher was still in the room and they were eating the marshmallow, had impulse control issues their whole life. And the kids in the middle, right, who could do it but had to work on themselves, really give us great insight into the kind of mental coaching we all do with ourselves when we're thinking about, should I not, what's the best thing to do in this situation? And that self-coaching is actually gives us a really good insight into what kids need to do to build resilience, right? So if you've never taken a look at those, please dive in. They're fascinating. They've redone those studies. They were done initially in the late 60s, early 70s, if I'm not mistaken, and they've been redone over and over and over again. By the way, 15 minutes is a long time now for kids to just sit in a room with marshmallows, like a really long time. And so they've shortened it up, which tells me something, that kids are losing that kind of long practices of self-regulating, like being bored with nobody entertaining them. And so they've shortened it up, which is another fascinating experiment in itself. Why have we shortened our expectations for kids? I'll leave that for you to stay awake with all night. But it's really important for kids to have daily practice with waiting your turn. Oh, I'm talking to, hold it. Oh, just a minute. Being disappointed. Like, I am sorry, but we cannot have macaroni and cheese every night of the week. You're going to have to deal. Or not being the center of attention. All those kinds of things. When you've wired them, you wire a human being who has a bigger capability of understanding how another person feels and thinks, and can actually co-regulate for someone else, right? It's a beautiful thing. And you do this all the time in high school and middle school. How often you count on your friends to co-regulate with you. Much of my work has been done in elementary schools in an early childhood setting, and you often see first graders or second graders really co-regulating with each other, right? Saying things like, that was bad. He shouldn't have said that to you, right? Or I'm gonna just sit by you for lunch. We're gonna do this together. And so one of the things that has me a little bit worried is a whole year for all of you who have been students in America this year who have not seen your co-regulators. You've lost kind of your safety net underneath you, although you have had the ability to connect via screens, but first graders or kindergartners aren't necessarily FaceTiming their friends for co-regulation issues. So all these things will be so fascinated to figure out what was the best of what happened to you in the last 2 years and what was the toughest. All behavior is communication. And I will tell you this, whether you are heading into an early childhood classroom or a 3rd grade classroom or a 7th grade classroom or a 12th grade classroom or beyond, all behavior is communication. I have to tell you that kids sometimes don't know how to put it all together when they're having a kind of a period of dysregulation. And so what they do is just emote and sometimes misbehave or spin around or punch something. Kids have really interesting ways to self-regulate that can look like misbehavior, but it really isn't. Parents will always, for you, have valuable insight into what makes kids tick. This is why my next section is about why you want to know parents, no matter what you teach. Because long before kids ride the bus, they ride shotgun with their parents. And parents have valuable insight about who that student in your classroom is. And so I want you to just think about this, that we often invite parents to come into schools to be involved, to maybe run something or to support a field trip in a classroom or fill out a survey or donate some money or spend some dollars at the Scholastic Book Fair. And those are just parent involvement opportunities, right? That just say, come on in, we see you, come on in. Parent engagement opportunities are different. It's where, come on in, we'll put a ring on it, thus the engagement. I need you to do this so that we can get something done. And so a conference might be there, running the show for a fundraiser, helping with your own expertise, parents' expertise in the classroom. If we were live and in person, this would be the time that I would raise your hands and ask you, in what ways have you seen your own parents be engaged, right, or involved? And sometimes, and in my case, most certainly, that was never, right? And so that's something as well, that parents now will have a new opportunity because of Zoom to engage them in ways that we didn't understand before COVID. And so that's a plus for COVID. Is I hope we always have Zoom conferences for parents, or opportunities for parents who could never maybe get to school to be able to live stream it. The pandemic has just opened the doors for parent engagement in my mind, in really, really exciting ways. And then there's parent education, and parent education is let's educate each other about what could work here. Tell me about your child, what strategies work. I will tell you what I see in the classroom. This is about separation anxiety. And so I know a lot about separation anxiety because I work in early childhood. Can I tell you this, that even in your very first year in education, parents will see you as an expert. And I want you to really embrace and lean into that. You might not even have children. You might not have taken a ton of child development classes yet, but you have 30, 28, 22 kids a year. That's a vast amount of experience. And so you kind of know, really intuitively, but with your own experience, how to support parents. And you are able to say, this is what most kids are doing at this age, which can be so helpful to normalize any experiences when parents are at home worried, do all kids do this? Boy, I've not seen another child do this. In ways that parents used to gather in community, they're not necessarily gathering anymore. One of the bonuses of gathering in community is you can eyeball other families and see what other kids are doing. If your kid is kind of doing the same thing, it helps to normalize your parenting. If not, it helps you get a foot in the door for some special reinforcements that kids might need. We are going to, like I said, we are going to have a reckoning for sure with easing back, because parents have been instrumental in making this year happen, depending on the grade their student is in. But now teachers and educators have been in the homes of students, sometimes for the first time ever. I've always done home visits. And so it's just part of what the work that I do is to meet families in their home, oftentimes before they come into school. And so this will have transformed teaching. Is now teachers are saying things to me like, I had no idea, or I now can see what I'm asking a family to do is nearly impossible, because I see the second grader and I see the parent and I see the toddler and the brand new baby, and it looks impossible. And so I think we might have we must meet families with grace as they come back. I get a little worried about when people say that there hasn't been learning in this year. And I will tell you this, I have seen more learning in families and from teachers in this year than ever before. And you will help build the narrative around that. It has been difficult and challenging, but I also wonder what kind of skills we bring forward, because we are forever changed by this experience we've had. For all of you, because you have been in school during this pandemic, you will bring with you into your career a whole family perspective, because you saw your whole family juggle distance learning or hybrid learning or back and forth, and a pandemic, and maybe COVID itself. And so that's part of the fabric of who you will bring into your future. Much like my mom's story was part of my fabric, this is part of your fabric. And everybody is curious to see how that has transformed you, how that has transformed education, how that has transformed families. And it's a Harvard story, a 5-minute kind of infographic animated infographic about why we invest in the infrastructure of families when it comes to investing in early childhood and taking a look at trauma and supporting parents, that I just think is wonderful. And so it'll be wonderful for those of you that are considering this. Although I think all of you are considering this, because parents are going to be showing up in new ways, no matter what school looks like next year, because they've been such a big part of school. And so take a look at it at some time. I think I love it. I just absolutely love it. And so it makes everything that I talked about sound so much smarter. Okay, so now it's the time for questions.
All right, so question number one, are parents and children before preschool age required to attend those parent education classes?
So in Minnesota, it is universal access. Anybody can, but no, most people aren't required. I do have and always have had folks who have been required because of a custody issue. So a judge or a lawyer might suggest that they take some parenting classes, or a judge or a lawyer might be concerned with some anger management issues, or a pastor has referred them. And so I would say that 1 in 15 to 30, depending on the year, folks in my classes have been asked to be there or ordered to be there. And I know who those people are, but nobody else knows who those people are. Yeah.
And do they come sort of every year? Is there a limit to how long they can attend? So if they have a newborn, do they only come for 1 year, or can they come for 3 years?
They can. So the program is open for parents who have a child from birth all the way through 3rd grade. So you teach at night. I taught 1 night a week forever and ever and ever. And so if they have a newborn and then they have a baby 2 years later and another baby 2 years later, people stay for a long time. By the way, even the court-ordered folks, right? You get them there and they understand that there's a community that cares about them, that connects around parenting, which is such an equalizer. There are very few things in our culture today that are just equalizers, but parenting is one of them. Pet ownership is another, by the way, but do you know what I mean? And I have never met a parent who doesn't want to do right by their kids. I've met a lot of parents who have a very different skill set than others, right? Who are coming from a place of trauma that need a lot of work to get there, but they get there. I've never met a parent who wakes up every day going, oh, how do I mess up my kid? I just don't meet them. They want to do better. They always want to do better.
And speaking about parents, some parents had a rather traumatic time when they were in school, and so they kind of hesitate to come in to talk to the principal, to talk to the teacher, to talk to whomever. So I've seen what your classroom used to look like. So the idea of chairs and desks in a row could be really overpowering to some people. So how did you organize your classroom to make it inviting for those parents who may have experienced some school trauma themselves?
For sure. And can I just tell you, I have seen that in action. One of the most compelling stories that I have is a dad and a little boy coming into kindergarten roundup. And I was behind them because I usually do a speech at kindergarten roundup. And he was holding his hand and the boy was kind of sniffling. And the dad said, yeah, it's school and it sucks, but we got to do it. You're going to hate it. I hated it, but it's just something we have to do. And I just broke. I mean, I professionally broke, but I always kept him in mind. And so I think my classroom has had rocking recliners, a coffee maker in circles with babies in the middle, comfy, cozy. And if that didn't feel right, I'm happy to meet you at your house. I did home visits where the baby was colicky and crying all the time. And so I said, pick me up. I will drive with you and the baby can sleep and we can talk, right? You just find a way to make school comfortable. I also am a big fan of having a greeter in buildings who just can say, we're glad you're here. We're so glad you're here. Not, this is the way to the Scholastic Book Fair. Make sure you sign up for PTA. What classroom are you looking for? But just like, I see you. I love the idea of Mama Stay and Papa Stay. instead of namaste. I can't do yoga because I can't bend, but when you just have a mama stay, it says, I see the best in you. Papa stay, I see the best in you, and you are welcome here. I think it's really important. I also maybe could get to you a relationship conference instead of a data conference for the first time, right? We need to build relationships with families in those early elementary years if they haven't been in school yet. So they feel like school is a resource and a support place and part of a community instead of the enemy. And so I love that idea of making it really, really welcoming. And some schools do great work in that area, and some just put, it seems like they put the grouchiest person at the door. And I just think, oh, come on, Walmart has figured this out. Let's figure this out. We need greeters, people who are super excited to see parents. And then super excited to say, hey, I have your boy James in my class. Wow, he has a lot of energy. Tell me where he gets that, instead of your son is running out of class, right? So just to try to frame things in a positive way. I love a question like, tell me why you named him James. And when parents think about their own children from their very first days, they soften. And when they hear a question like that, it says to them, I see you as a parent. And I just feel like those kinds of things can really set up a conversation that could be the start of a really great relationship.
Okay, thank you. And I remember seeing your classroom with the semicircle of lazy boys and thinking,
Yeah.
this is not like any classroom I have ever seen
No,
before.
no.
So yeah, definitely an inviting place that doesn't necessarily look like a classroom, I think.
Right. Right.
There.
And you know, I just have to tell you that even if you weren't able to do that, if every parent who walked into a school in America saw a parent resource room with a parenting library, some coffee, a place to sit until it was your turn to have a conference that was warm and inviting, with some resources in the community on a bulletin board, a space for parents in every school, I think makes good sense, because we really do partner with them. We say that, but then when they come in, they sometimes feel like, I don't know how I fit here. And so let's try to make it easier for them to feel like they have a place. It goes back to those Maslow's Glasser's hierarchy of needs, right? They need to feel like they are cared about and they belong as well.
Mm-hmm. All righty. Next question. How has the pandemic changed parent education when you can't get them into the room, into those lazy boys? And has Zoom actually made home visits easier because it's a little more convenient for people to be able to beam in?
So it really challenged the infrastructure in Minnesota of parent education. And I tell people all the time that I can read a Zoom. No, I can read a room far better than I can read a Zoom. And so part of my success as a parent educator is my disposition for it, which is much better in person. But we've also learned that lots of people will show up. I taught a class on Monday nights from 8 o'clock till 9:30 because people were thrilled to be able to put their kids to bed, to bring their partner to the couch, and for both of them to hear whatever lesson I was presenting, right? And home visiting is easier to do, although you lose something, right? And so it gave accessibility to folks we weren't seeing in classes anyway, because they couldn't find the time, couldn't make it work consistently. But so we found new people and we got the job done. And we were able to pull together a digital curriculum for parents who were just struggling with COVID-related issues. So we got pretty creative, like everybody. We got really creative in our state.
Okay, cool. So for many of for our viewers today, they're all high school and middle school students. So these are, students who are looking to become educators and move into the field. When they become first-year teachers, many of them, the parents are older than them. Yeah. And it can be very daunting for young teachers to actually engage with parents because they feel like, well, they're older, they should know better. How do I talk to a parent about this when I don't even have my own kids? So what advice would you give to future teachers and working with parents and caregivers? And in some cases, of course, the students are living with grandparents or with aunts and uncles or whatever the case might be.
I love this question so much. Can I tell you that I love this question so much? Okay, So here's what happens to most of us. I think when we feel afraid or vulnerable and powerless, we show up with power, right? Like you think, oh, I got to flex some muscles. And so our conference starts like, here's the data, right? You got to flex what you know. Like, I know reading scores and I know this and I know that. And so we start in a way that is almost, it's just adverse to where parents want you to be. So I love just leaning in and admitting to who we are. And so it happens for me when I am working with a family who has a very different cultural experience than I do. Instead of just trying to puff up in my own, right, in my own, what I know about my own experience, I like to lean in and say, tell me everything I need to know, right? You be the expert. I love passing an expert hat to somebody else because it's obvious. It's really obvious that you're the youngest person in the room, that maybe you know that you're not married or that you're not partnered or you're not having kids. And so to say, here's what I can tell you about teaching, but you know everything there is to know about James. So tell me, what makes him spark? What do you love best about it? And what does he say about me, right? And so even if you don't have kids, you can partner with another grown-up. And I think that that makes for the best kind of relationship and equalizer ever. Because after you've put down your walls, because if you come prepared with power, people usually get defensive as well. But if you come with a vulnerability, that lowers their defenses as well. And then you can say, thanks for telling me. Now, here's what I know about the curriculum. Here's what we're going to do. You are an expert. You understand teaching. You understand your curriculum. You understand your content. But let parents lead with their role as a child's first teacher. I love to say that at a first conference. I have uber respect for you as your child's first teacher. Tell me, as his first teacher, what kind of success do you have, right? Or what are your favorite strategies? How does he learn best? Just take in whatever they want to give you. And they usually want to give you a lot because parents are super proud of their kids.
And being a member of Team James or Team whoever the student is,
Yeah.
you know, and the parents sometimes just need to talk, right? And get a
Yes.
lot off their chest. So
Yes.
giving them the space to be that expert in the room and listening to them really starts to let them know that everyone is being heard and that
Yes.
the child's best interest is at heart. So yeah,
And even if that takes the 20 minutes, this is where Zoom is a miracle. Then you can say, oh, do you know what? Let's connect with Zoom next week and I'll get through this other stuff with you, right? Like there's no rush. I think parents really can tell when teachers are trying to move ahead. And ignoring this step, I think, is just detrimental to your relationship, not just with that parent, but with the student as well. Mm-hmm. So it's imperative, I think. I wish that we had relationship conferences before school even started, you know?
Would make things a lot easier getting to know the kids.
Yes.
But of course, building those relationships and getting to know your kids is the basis of education, right? The
hallmark of every teacher portfolio I've ever read.
Yeah.
Ever. Yep.
You can't reach them till you can't teach them till you reach them.
That's exactly it.
There you go.
All right. Want to know how much you care to write that one too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so we talked about some social and emotional skills, and of course those kids ages 0 to 4 are really in the zone of developing a myriad of those social and emotional skills. So of all of the social and emotional skills that they are working on, what do you think is the most important thing for parents to help them work on?
Okay, that's so big. That is such a big question. I'm going to take small bites.
Okay.
Okay, so if kids come into school with a feeling vocabulary and understanding that their feelings are nothing to be afraid of, they can manage them themselves or find help to manage them, I think that's golden. I think that's golden for life. If your own feelings feel like you can manage them, they're not scary, they're part of who you are, they inform your decisions, they tell you something very important about yourself, I think it makes a better human being. And so recognizing, validating, and supporting children's feelings.
Okay.
Again, next week I might tell you something else, but that's what I got.
It depends on the week, right?
Exactly.
All right, and then last question, which is sort of more of an open-ended one. I know you've done some advocacy work around play as well. So could you tell us why do you need to advocate for play? It seems like that's like play is a no-brainer. Shouldn't everybody be doing this?
Yeah. Can I do that while I go back to sharing my screen?
Sure.
Okay, good. So yes, so I would say basically lost my mind in the last 4 years around this, because when people talk about preschool for all, what we've actually done is we have thought that maybe if we give kids an elementary experience earlier, they'll be better seniors in high school, or they'll meet their benchmarks or their milestones earlier, but they don't. So we've got it flipped. We've got it backwards, that the push for academics that has snuffed out play have made for kids with more mental health issues, more referrals to special ed, and kids who are just not feeling as enthusiastic about school as they should. And so it's messy. Play is messy. It's hard to measure. It doesn't show up on an assessment exam as easily. And so it doesn't fit into the box. But our job is not to help 3-year-olds fit into a 3rd grade box. Our job as educators is to help 3-year-olds be playful and curious and learning so that they do well in 3rd grade. So look at that. It's almost like you primed me for my next slide. Okay, so I will tell you that one of the things that I really feel strongly about is if play is your thing and play is my thing, or if parent ed is your thing, just own your leadership capacity earlier than you think. There are so many people that I've met who are leaders who will tell you out loud and to your face, if they're truthful about it, is I didn't really feel like a leader, but I acted like a leader. And then the feeling about it, the confidence in it came later. And that is definitely my journey. And so find organizations that help you do advocacy work. I also had thought for years and years that I could just go alone, and that's just ridiculous. Someone should have just wrestled me and said, no, find people who are singing the same song. There are a lot of people doing this work. And so this is just for you as a place to get started. So the play one, there's lots of folks to follow on Instagram. There's a US Play Coalition, the American Association of Pediatric Doctors right now, and I'm not kidding, are giving prescriptions to families for 60 minutes of unstructured play every day. Like, well, there you go, right? Those are doctors who are saying that this is necessary for kids. And so I've laid out an advocacy page for you. Go ahead and snap that if you grab that screen if you would like to get started. But I just went to the very tip of the iceberg for most of them. But the point is, you don't have to go it alone. But right now, it feels really urgent for play, especially because the federal government is starting to talk about it. And so I think I tweeted right after the president said, let's get all 3 and 4-year-olds in preschool. And I think I tweeted something like, I'm all in for universal preschool for everyone, but not if it means that 3 and 4-year-olds are going to do another year of 1st grade, right? And so very typically, kindergarten teachers will say that kindergarten looks much more like 1st grade than it ever has. And that push for academics has bled down actually into early childhood now. So it's time to draw a line in the sand and say, nope, play is really important, and we'll sweep up the glitter, we promise. We'll get the Play-Doh out of the carpet, don't worry about it. But by the way, if you want a child who can go to kindergarten and learn scissors, guess what the best thing to do is to play in Play-Doh, right? And to swing on a swing. When you think about hand grip and strength, I could go on and on. All right, so then this is the time that I say thank you. I want every single one of you to know that if you're considering education, it's because you should be, right? I know so many people say, I could not do that. Oh my gosh, bless you, I could not do that. But if you're considering it, it means because you can. And so it's awesome. I have to tell you, I have met the most amazing people. When you think about it, teachers are great And it's also exhausting. And so it's really important for you to take good care of yourself. So with that, I think, hold on, did I do a thank you? Oh, that was my thank you slide. Okay, good.
So I would like to say thank you so much, Katie. This has been fantastic. I really appreciate your insight on play and parent education and early childhood. This has been fantastic, and I laughed out loud in several places. So this has been really fantastic. So thank you so much for joining us today. We've had a wonderful discussion with you, and have a great weekend. Thanks so much, folks.